What happens when television royalty meets actual royalty, and everything goes spectacularly wrong? You won't believe what unfolds when Graham Norton's legendary charm collides head-on with royal protocol gone rogue. Last night's episode of The Graham Norton Show delivered the most explosive confrontation in talk show history, leaving audiences stunned and social media ablaze. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds. The atmosphere in the iconic Red Chair studio was electric from the moment Meghan Markle stepped onto the set. What began as what appeared to be a standard celebrity appearance quickly transformed into television gold that nobody saw coming. The tension was palpable even before the cameras started rolling, with crew members later describing an unusual coldness backstage that set the stage for what would become the most talked-about talk show moment of the year. Norton, known for his quick wit and ability to navigate even the most challenging celebrity interviews, seemed prepared for a typical promotional chat. However, from the very first exchange, it became clear that this would be anything but ordinary. The Irish host's signature warmth met an unexpected wall of defensiveness that would only grow more impenetrable as the minutes ticked by. "So, Meghan, you've been quite vocal about your experiences with the British media." Norton began with his characteristic gentle probe, clearly attempting to ease into what he likely anticipated would be sensitive territory. "How are you finding life in California these days?" The Duchess's response came loaded with an edge that immediately shifted the studio's energy. "Graham, I think it's fascinating how people always want to frame my story as running away rather than running towards something better," she replied, her voice carrying an unmistakable sharpness. "But I suppose that's the narrative that sells, isn't it?" Norton's eyebrows raised slightly, a telltale sign that even he was caught off guard by the immediate defensiveness. The studio audience, typically warm and responsive, seemed to sense the brewing storm. "Well, I was actually just asking about California," he replied with a nervous chuckle, attempting to diffuse what was already becoming an uncomfortable moment. "The weather must be lovely compared to London." But Meghan wasn't having it. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about," she continued, her posture becoming more rigid in the famous red chair. "Everything gets twisted into some sort of commentary about my choices, my family, my husband's family. Can't a person simply exist without every word being dissected for hidden meaning?" The host, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to safer waters, made another attempt at lightness. "I think you might be reading a bit much into a question about sunshine. But fair enough," Norton said with his trademark diplomatic smile. "Let's talk about your new projects then. I understand you have some exciting ventures in the works." This seemingly innocuous transition proved to be the match that lit the fuse. Meghan's expression darkened noticeably as she leaned forward in her chair. "You know what, Graham? I came here tonight expecting a different kind of conversation. I thought British television might have evolved beyond the same tired talking points and veiled criticisms." The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras still rolling. Norton, usually unflappable, showed the first signs of genuine irritation. "Meghan, I'm not sure what conversation you think you're having, but I've asked you about California and your projects. Those seem like fairly standard questions for a talk show." "Standard for who?" she shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Standard for someone you're trying to diminish. Standard for someone you want to put in their place. Because that's what this feels like, Graham. This feels like another attempt to make me defend choices that frankly aren't anyone's business but my own." The tension in the room was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Norton's famous composure began to crack as he realized this wasn't going according to any script he could have imagined. "I have to say, I'm genuinely confused about what's happening here," he said, his Irish accent becoming more pronounced as it typically did when he was flustered. "You're a guest on my show, presumably to promote something or simply have a chat. But you seem to have come prepared for a battle that I wasn't aware we were fighting." Meghan's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Oh, how convenient. Play innocent. Act like you don't understand the dynamics at play here. You know exactly what this is about, Graham. This is about putting the American who married into the family in her place, isn't it?" Norton's patience, legendary though it was, finally began to show visible strain. "Right. I think we need to take a step back here," he said, his voice taking on a firmer edge. "I've been doing this show for years, And I've never had a guest come on and immediately assume hostile intent from perfectly ordinary questions. You're creating a conflict where none existed. Creating a conflict? Meghan's voice rose to a level that had the studio audience shifting uncomfortably in their seats. I'm responding to the energy I'm receiving, Graham. I'm not some naive newcomer who doesn't understand how these games are played. I see exactly what's happening here. The host, now visibly frustrated, set down his cards and looked directly at his guest. What exactly do you think is happening here, Meghan? Because from where I'm sitting, I asked about the weather and your projects, and you've turned it into some sort of persecution complex. That's not on me, that's on you. The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Meghan's face flushed with anger, and for a moment, it seemed like she might escalate even further. Persecution complex? She repeated, her voice dangerously quiet now. Is that what we're calling it when someone refuses to play along with subtle undermining? Norton, his famous diplomacy finally exhausted, leaned back in his chair with an expression of barely contained exasperation. Meghan, I've interviewed everyone from Hollywood A-listers to world leaders, and I can honestly say I've never had someone read this much hostility into questions about weather and work projects. If that's undermining to you, then I genuinely don't know how to have a conversation with you. The Duchess stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the studio floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent space like a gunshot. You know what, Graham? I don't think you do know how to have this conversation, and I don't think I need to sit here and pretend this is anything other than Wooded Island. Norton stood as well, his professional instincts kicking in despite the chaos. And what exactly is it, Meghan? Because I'm still genuinely at a loss as to what I've done wrong here. What you've done wrong is assume that I would come on here and play nice while you lobbed your little digs disguised as innocent questions, she replied, gathering her purse with sharp, angry movements. But I'm not playing that game anymore. Not with you. Not with anyone. The host's composure finally cracked completely. Right. Well, if asking about California weather constitutes little digs in your world, then perhaps this conversation was doomed from the start, Norton said, his voice carrying an edge of sarcasm that his audience had rarely heard. I'm sorry you feel that basic human interaction is somehow beneath you. Meghan whirled around to face him one final time, her eyes blazing. Basic human interaction? Is that what you call this charade? Graham, I expected better from you. I really did. But I suppose I should have known better. Known better about what? Norton demanded, his own voice rising now to match hers. What exactly should you have known better about? Having a normal conversation? Answering straightforward questions? Treating your host with basic courtesy? I should have known better than to expect to be treated like a human being instead of a target, she snapped back, taking a step toward the exit. But don't worry, Graham. You won't have to pretend to be interested in my weather preferences anymore. Norton shook his head in disbelief, watching as his guest moved toward the studio exit. Meghan, you've turned what should have been a pleasant chat into something I genuinely don't recognize. If that's how you want to handle things, then so be it. She paused at the edge of the set, turning back one final time with a look of complete disgust. Pleasant for who, Graham? Pleasant for you? Pleasant for your audience, who gets to watch you take down someone who dared to marry above their station? That is completely out of line, Norton said firmly, his professional mask finally slipping entirely. I have never, in all my years of doing this show, treated a guest with anything but respect. The fact that you've twisted that into some sort of attack says far more about you than it does about me. Meghan's final words cut through the stunned silence like a blade. The fact that you can't even see what you're doing proves my point perfectly, Graham, but I'm done trying to explain it to people who refuse to listen. With that, she strode off the set, leaving Norton standing alone in front of a shell-shocked audience and millions of viewers who had just witnessed television history in the making. The host stood there for a long moment, clearly trying to process what had just occurred, before slowly returning to his chair as the cameras continued to roll on what would undoubtedly become one of the most replayed moments in talk show history.